Hope that was loud enough for everyone, like it was for me. All right, that seems pretty stable. So we'll kick off. Michael, if you can keep an eye on the participants, that would be great. Thank you.
Yep.
So thanks everybody for coming to eRec TDG for 6th of November. We've got quite a packed agenda today, so I will be pushing for motions and decisions today, but we will of course give time for discussions where discussions are needed and make sure that we do get the right answer. I will begin with the acknowledgement of country. So we acknowledge that the traditional custodians of the land on which we all gather today. We pay our respect to elders past and present and extend our respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. We acknowledge the First Nations people as first scientists, educators, and healers. So today we have our usual business and updates, our approval of minutes, updates on actions, other updates. Then we'll go back into our ballot for working standard, and then we'll look at the ballot for working standard reconciliation as the meat of today's agenda. There's quite a few items to get through, as I said, so we'll try and push to get some decisions made. We might need to hold a couple over, but we'll see how we go. Starting with our usual business for today, the minutes have been circulated. I hope everybody's had a chance to read them. I will put out for a poll for us to vote on the approval of those minutes from the last meeting as well. And I'll push that out now.
Oh, we might just need a motion in a second on that.
That would probably make sense. If somebody could motion.
I'm happy
to.
Oh, sorry, Michael, you go.
Oh, I was going to say I'm happy to motion.
Okay, we have a motion on the approval of minutes by Michael. My apologies. Is there a second on that?
Is that the correct date, guys? 20th of November? On the link?
Yeah, do you want to, Stuart, just want to go to the link? I think there's a typo in the actual
link.
No
worries.
It may actually even be the wrong link in the minutes.
Well, let's find out.
Yep, that was the wrong link. It should be the 23rd of October. So the wrong link is in the meeting agenda.
Cool.
So my motion is to accept the 23rd of October minutes.
I just put a link in the chat if that's any help.
That's a big help. Thank you.
Thanks, Charlie.
Is there a second on Michael's motion?
And I'm happy to second.
Perfect. Thank you.
I'm +1 in the chat.
+1 in the chat. Thank you. If anybody can't vote for any reason, please feel free to put your vote in the chat. We have another +1 from Yoni. +1 from Michael Osborne. And I'll end the poll in 3, 2, 1. Cool. So we have 12 + 3 for 15 in the affirmative and 6 abstain, no negative.
Sorry, Stuart. I think 6 in the poll. +3 is 9.
Can I not count?
I think it's of 12. So that's 6 of 12. Please share the results.
9 in the affirmative, 6 abstain. Thank you, Michael. My apologies. Alrighty. Next up, we have our 2025 HL7 Australian Melbourne Flyer Connectathon this time. 2 days at Swanston Street in Melbourne. That'll be on the 9th and 10th of December. The event has sold out. Please email events@hl7.com.au to get on the wait list if you do want to go. And as soon as tickets are made available, I believe they're on a first come, first serve in terms of the wait list. But they will get out any dropped tickets that are available to other people. So that will be on the 9th and 10th of December next month in Melbourne. Moving on to our ballot for working standard update. So this isn't the reconciliation. This is the update on where we're at. Currently, we have 99 JIRA issues. We've triaged 100% of them. Is that the one we were over on, Michael? That was quite entertaining.
Yeah, so we're 101 of 99, given that one of the issues that was raised had a number of other issues in it. So we just created new JIRAs for them.
Cool.
So we actually end up with 101%, really.
Cool. Okay. So we're 101% triaged, going above and beyond here in the co-chairs. Reconciliation is at 65%, so 65 issues and 33 have been applied. The applied count includes only changes persuasive or persuasive with mod. So no other changes are included on those ones. It's just those. Where we're at for the actual ballot itself, we're currently in the reconciliation, hoping to complete by the end of this month. Then that will move to publication in February. We have 59 voters. I don't believe any of this has changed since last meeting. So it's 59 voters, individuals were 10, organizations were 49. The votes are still the same, with 20% in the affirmative, 11 no vote, 3 abstain, 36 neg, 9 affirm, 59 were eligible. So 20% in the affirmative. We're not passing so far. We need 60% in the affirmative. So everybody go and jump on and help push that up.
Yeah, so the process there is once we finish reconciliation, HL7 Australia will go out to balloters asking them if they would like to withdraw their votes. So hopefully we've resolved all the issues satisfactorily. We'll have those negative votes then withdrawn, which will hopefully get us to our 60% target for publication. So that's where reconciliation is important, that we get the right resolutions that people are happy with.
Perfect. And as Brett says, we need 110% from everyone. Alrighty. So our last block vote 4, issues that are considered non-persuasive. It was open from the 16th to the 19th of October. There was 1 vote for refer to Telecon, and that ended up with 14 in the affirmative, no negative, no abstain. So the e-vote on that block vote passed. So I believe that's been added to the stats already. But that was the result of the last block vote.
And the refer to Telecon we'll go through today.
Cool. Nice and easy. So moving into the actual meat, which is the reconciliation, we'll start with our current open block votes. They close, is that next Wednesday? I think it is, on the 12th of November. So that's 2 block votes as 5 and 6. Clarifications and presentation improvements in 5, and 6 will be issues that are deferred as considered for future use. Your e-vote will apply across the entire set of JIRA issues in that block. If you vote affirmative, you're voting to approve the proposed disposition of all JIRA items in the set. I know everybody knows that, but I will repeat it just so everyone is aware. If you refer to Telecon, that means 1 or more items need to be discussed by the group at the next available TDG. You must provide a comment to indicate which JIRA needs to be discussed and be prepared to discuss that item at the next TDG. If you vote it for refer to Telecon, we prefer that you own it in that TDG and discuss why you're bringing it here. Refer to Telecon and negatives that don't have a comment will be considered abstain. So if you want to refer back to TDG, make sure that you include the issue and be prepared to talk about it. Michael's put those links in the chat as well, so you can jump in there and have a look at those. Again, they close on the 12th. If there is anything for Telecon, it will come to the next TDG.
Yeah, I just like to say, I think it's important that everyone who can in the TDG does vote. These are still important issues. It's important you have a look at them, look at the proposed resolution and vote. We've had reasonably low numbers of voting in the e-votes. So if you can, please vote on electronic votes to add your contribution.
Cool. Thank you, everyone. Moving on to our reconciliation. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we've got quite a few to get through today. Most of them are normative. We've got a couple of consider for future use, persuasive with mod, duplicates, persuasive, and 1 not persuasive. So we'll have a look at all of those today. We're starting with 52412. Oh, wrong button.
Stuart, I'm happy to take over if you want.
Yeah, sure.
If you want, I'm ready to run through these. So
there we go. Michael's all over it. I will pass to Michael.
All right, I will share my screen though, so I can drive. Find the right button.
I'll just drop this one so it's easier.
Okay, yeah, find the right window. Okay. See how that goes. Hopefully you can see my slide now.
Yep.
Yeah, that's coming.
Yep, excellent. Okay, we've done the block votes. Okay, so like Stuart just said, we've got a lot of issues to get through today. It's important for us to try and hit our target for ballot reconciliation. We've got the plan for this meeting, the next meeting, and the meeting after, which are all the remaining ballot issues we need to get through, as well as the e-votes that are out at the moment. So it's going to be a real push. So we've got to work hard to get through these. Let's see how we go today. Okay. First item here is, I'll put this in the chat as well, so you can follow along. If I get the right window, put that in the chat. Okay. So this was actually in part of block vote 3. So 52412, the use of IPS pregnancy status creates must support and obligation issues. This talks about, we have a pregnancy status referenced as supporting info from our AU eRequesting service request. The issue here is that using an IPS observation in supporting info does not address any specific obligations for use in eRequesting, so it's not adequately defined. Use of IPS profile arbitrarily brings in other constraints. Use of subject reference to patient IPS. It's not intrinsically linked with AU core patients, requires a reference. Use of pregnant status IPS value set, which is unique to IPS. Has member references to IPS pregnancy, estimated delivery date, excludes body site specimen device, and reference ranges have not been discussed. This also creates an ongoing dependency on the full IPS package, affecting ease of use for implementers. So the suggestion here was to create an eRequesting pregnancy status profile. The subject would be an eRequesting patient, draft and refer to HL7 THO or the FIRE work group or NCTS, creating pregnancy status value set, consider any other obligations, and refer this AU core for potential inclusion, AU core profile R3, and drop all dependencies on IPS. So this was in eRequesting block vote 3. The proposed disposition when it was in block vote 3 was considered for future use. And the disposition for that was AU authors have advised that to ensure future compatibility, the AU eRequesting pregnancy status requirement remains constrained until the AU CDI pregnancy summary concept is developed. Dependency on this pregnancy summary concept need to be considered before an AU eRequesting profile should be created. So it was removed from the block vote as a refer to telecon by Heath. Heath, I don't know, do you want to talk to your comment there?
Just looking at my comment, sorry. Yeah, so I guess probably my main concern is that we're actually adding a dependency on another IG that we are likely to remove in the future. And because we will likely to have an equivalent concept in AU core at some point, we don't know when. My understanding is that there's a bit of a hold up in the CDG or the AU CDI side of things, and we don't want to create an AU core profile for this until that's been properly worked through with the clinicians. Although they do have a pregnancy summary concept in AU CDI, it is not a pregnancy status, which is what we're looking for here. So using the IPS one, although the final solution may be very similar, if not exactly the same, it does currently provide us with will require us to have a dependency on an IG that is not under our control, and also has many other dependent associations with other profiles, such as an IPS patient. And I can't remember some of the others, but I think Codable Concept IPS profile is another one. So they have a profile for the Codable Concept things. Now it has obligations and all those sorts of things as well. But because the obligations are in the context of IPS actors, those obligations don't apply to eRequesting, and hence their profiles are basically obligationless in the context of eRequesting. So although you might have must support, there is no, in the IPS pregnancy status profile that you're referencing, you've got no obligations on any of those must support elements within it, because they're not tied to any eRequesting actors. All that is probably quite complex, but it is alluding to the complexity of the relationships or the dependencies that you're actually bringing in by doing this.
I think you've suggested here that the options that we potentially remove the reference until an AU4 profile is available, or wait for the profile before publication.
So rather than just leave it the way it is and come back later, my thoughts would be to actually remove the dependency and then add it when it's available, and do it properly the first time.
So I think you also had a question here about the intent of this ballot. Is it to publish or for another ballot? So our definite intent at the moment is for publication. So we are looking for publication in February, which means that we won't have the other profile available because it's on the backlog. So yeah, the only real option is to really leave it as is, or look to remove it. So I think I do have another couple of slides. Just jump to the next one. So this was talking about how we have that actually implemented at the moment. So this talks about how our pregnancy status would align to a future AUCDI pregnancy summary concept. We had spoken to the CDG, and they're okay with us proceeding at the moment with basically a pregnancy status proposal that supported pregnant only as the only option. So you noted that there was a value set that has a number of options in it. That's an IPS specific value set, but we would constrain it to pregnant only. I'll jump ahead, just noting here, so we have on our diagnostic request profile, we have supporting info pregnancy status, which references the pregnancy status IPS. It has a constraint on it, this SRR02. What that constraint is doing is actually restricting the pregnancy status to only a value of pregnant. So it's SNOMED CT code 77386-006, which is pregnant only. So that came about through this ballot for comment issue in chat, which was raised by Angus through ballot for comment, that talked about the need for a pregnancy status. A pregnancy status flag was originally being looked at. So this was looking to replicate that checkbox equivalent on the paper form. As part of this resolution, we had a pregnancy status proposal. This proposal here talked about deriving from the IPS pregnancy status and only using the supported value of pregnant. And we had some AUCDI advice that said that would be okay to support this, so we don't conflict with any future potential development in this space. So that's what we used as the guide to implement it. It was always the original decision to use IPS. So I think if we're going to decide that we're going to remove the profile, it may be a revisit. Sorry, Brett, I see your hand up.
Oh yeah, like this was my ticket originally, as well. It's just that it is a big complexity to add these packages in. If you're configuring and installing this in a regular file server, but then becomes you have to bring in a whole bunch of dependencies that you really need not, unless this artifact existed. So yeah, I kind of think it brings a lot of baggage with it. Or at least you need to manage that specifically. The other thing I had a query about was in your patient references, do you still allow logical identifier references as well as explicit references?
So it would be the same as AE core. So we haven't profiled anything differently from AE core.
IPS profiles it to require a patient reference, and so you can't just use logical identifiers as an option. So that's probably just something to consider as well. If that's something people are wanting to do, they'd have to possibly think about that, because they probably need to absent reason that reference and deal with that. Yeah, so that's like a technical issue if you're expecting to do the same thing with this profile. Yeah.
Andy?
Yeah. So this is the way we currently do it in implementation and production. I note that, yes, you do need to bring in IPS. In terms of the server, it doesn't really add that much complexity. My concern is saying nothing. And pregnancy status is such a fundamental part of the diagnostic requesting process. I think leaving it unsaid will just create all sorts of opportunities for alternative approaches to manifest. And then rather than having a single approach that needs to change, we will end up with multiple approaches that potentially needs to change. And that, I think, is actually more of a burden. And given we have a significant portion of the pathology market already doing this, and radiology are jumping on board as well. I guess I'm just loath to walk away and not say anything. IPS seemed the lesser of several evils. We could make something up to do it, but it's in some ways I always kind of try never to do that. If there is something that you can harvest from, acknowledging I had a chat to Heath last week about this, and certainly the points he raises around obligations and stuff are all very valid. But in the approach we've taken, I think we're quite minimalist, and we've created an object which is, I think, one of the most straightforward to extricate and replace as part of the supporting information package.
Thanks, Andy. Brett?
Yeah, I mean, in the original ticket, I suggested you having your own profile to cover this, and something that would comply with IPS is possible. I mean, you have constraints already, which you've expressed as invariants. But I kind of think that that's a lower baggage approach, would be to have an IPS compatible profile of your own, where you use the same code and bring in your own obligations as well, because at the moment there's no real population obligations other than the mandatory content in there. So it's kind of, sure, it's a pattern, but it doesn't really force much except the mandatory content, and the must supports are not defined for eRequesting. So obligations are not defined for eRequesting. So yeah, so that was the suggestion, and that would drop the dependency and achieve the same result.
Brett, is there implication of that though, that us introducing new profiles at this point may impact our ability to publish in February?
Or you have already, so
I suppose the new profiles we've done at the moment have just added obligations. Is that what you're proposing, just an obligation only profile?
see.
Or what I
Yeah,
was going to
well,
say was that
yeah.
if it is along the lines of what Brett was saying, which is effectively exactly the same as IPS but not IPS, then you've already balloted that people are okay with that profile. We're just effectively applying the same constraints, but in the context of an e-requesting profile. So I've personally, I think that the issue that I had heard was that it was more that there wasn't a lot of that there was pushback from the CDG. But now I'm hearing that you've actually got advice that they're okay with the current one. And if we actually had a profile that was exactly the same as the current IPS one, I could see that maybe the FAR working group would be acceptable to the fact that, well, actually it's on the wire, it's no different.
I think the
But has the
original
benefit with no baggage.
I think the original concept of using IPS though was that we just weren't going to profile, right? Which is something that already exists. We'll just use it and make sure you can only use the pregnant code. And therefore we weren't going to attempt to model it because we didn't have anything to model it from, right? Because we don't have the AU CDI definition of it. So it was just, here's something that we will replace with something in the future when we know what it is. I suppose taking that next step and creating an e-requesting pregnancy status profile is a bit more specific. That seems we've put some thought into it. This is what we think it's going to be, versus we're just using something off the shelf. So this is the version 2 of the IPS pregnancy status. And these are these obligations that you're talking about.
Yeah. But it's the internal ones. It's the ones within the IPS that have absolutely no meaning to you in the context of e-requesting. They're the issues.
Yeah.
Yes, you've got obligations at the supporting info level, but you don't have any obligations within the pregnancy status.
I think given I'd definitely like to hear from Andy again, given that this is the approach that vendors are using in production at the moment, which is what we modeled it from. That I think the full intent in here is that we will look to move to a e-requesting or AU core profile, which was this. We just weren't going to do it yet. And as soon as we're in a position where we can do that, we would create these profiles. So the question isn't about whether we will do it or not. It's about whether we need to do it now or the current solution is acceptable for release 1. It's not about whether we're going to do it in the long term. It's just about the future.
So the issue around the now versus the future is that you're concerned it might stop you from publishing, or is it the effort required to do so?
Yeah, it's the publication and reballoting what we come up with. Given that at this point in time we shouldn't really be developing new content in the ballot. It's about the publication of the content we'd already developed. So developing new content at this point isn't really appropriate. And whether we find other issues as we start profiling it, are we going to change constraints? Are we going to change obligations? We'd have to work through all that versus what we had there. That has been used. It's been used at Connect funds, and indicated that's the approach being used in production and systems. That this is the current interim for release 1 when we'll do it properly with a new profile in the future. Brett?
Yeah, it's just there is wiggle room in there for people to like it, because there's like, I guess there's some assumption there's only one patient in this scenario, right? One patient resource. But since you haven't guaranteed that the patient referred to is going to be an e-requesting patient, profiled patient, I think that creates some
Yeah, I think there's no doubt
confusion.
that
Yeah.
there's no doubt that there is. I don't think there's any debate about that. It's, do we have to address this for R1 and potentially impact our publication in time for February, or can we leave it as is and resolve it in the future, in a future release? I think that's the, like, is this going to cause so much problem as it is now that we need to address it prior to publication? Otherwise, we can't publish. I think that's the real question. If we don't fix this now, can we not publish?
So, I mean, Brett, do you think that, sorry, Kathleen?
Oh, that's okay. I was just going to ask, if we ignore the publication piece at the moment, which I know is important, what is the clinical ramifications if we don't support or if we do support?
There aren't any. I mean, the issue with in general, I think it's we have a lot of places in the eRequesting spec that create opportunities for divergence in the way we specify things. So it is by no means a locked down specification. Clearly, there's things around the diversity of, as Brett raised, or he's one of the two, around referencing. Like, we don't lock down logical references or contained references. We will, the spec will allow for a number of different technical packages that are still valid, but are quite different. So as an implementer, you will still either have to support all possible options, or you'll have the foundation of the eRequesting spec, which will get you, I don't know, 90% of the way there, and you'll have 10% variation that you'll still need to either completely support the variation or lock down with your community that for the R1 that you've agreed to try out these restrictions. And there are a number of things where we don't as yet know how those restrictions are going to manifest in production systems. We've got some ideas because we have done it for some, but there is a transition process we're going to have to go through. My biggest issue for this is really that whatever we do is going to be in most ways regarded as a temporary stopgap. So it was, what's the least we can do to represent something which, at the moment in most all of the clinical systems, apart from maybe OBS and gynecology, is simply a checkbox. And that's all it is a patient reference and an indication of pregnancy. And that's what it manifests on almost every requesting form in the country. So yes, we could build a new profile. We wouldn't even need necessarily to make it look like IPS. That was never the point. It was never saying, we really love IPS, so we'll use that. It was more like, we really don't want to do much with this. What's something we can reuse? IPS has already done this. Let's reuse the IPS as a temporary measure until we get to a point to lock down whatever the broader requirement is around that stuff. So, it doesn't, I think, introduce any greater clinical safety issues than would otherwise manifest in other parts of the specification.
Yep, I think, yeah, that's well said. That was my understanding of how we got to this as well.
Okay.
Because we're all basically lazy and want to do the least amount of work we can to get to something that'll kind of get us over the gap until, because I mean, this was a long running conversation around pregnancy and what we did with it.
Yeah,
Thanks, Michael.
I think the pattern, I think we all kind of know the pattern will be like that. So it's more just the methodology. I think that's the issue. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, if there's no, like, I would like to hear if there's any reasoning that without making this change, we shouldn't publish. If we don't have that, I'd like to motion that we accept this considered future use disposition.
I mean, I'm unlikely to withdraw this ticket. So I mean, but you vote as you vote, right? So I'm only one vote, so that's fine.
So what does that mean, Brett? If you don't withdraw, it doesn't like
it'll
because
just
there's
be
a
one
60%.
on the ballot.
Did you say
Yeah.
there's a 60% thing that they can still go ahead even without?
Yeah. They
But
you just
Brett,
have to pass the entire ballot.
But Brett, you saying you're not going to withdraw the ticket, saying that we should not publish unless we have resolved this.
Yeah,
And
I
negative
just don't.
vote saying that we should not publish. Like this was, in your opinion, we shouldn't publish
Yeah, I don't think
if we haven't resolved this.
I don't think it's adequate. Because I think there's too many problems that can occur because of the constraints that IPS puts on things that observation status refers to.
What's the likelihood that Fire Working Group wouldn't let us publish R1 if we created a profile for this?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, that's a different question, and I think it's, I mean, co-chairs of eRequesting essentially need to decide. But
my feeling is that what absolutely I think we need our own profile, and then we should be moving towards our own profile for this, is that we don't want to do the development for that now in the ballot cycle for release 1, right? Because we have to go through the TDG, saying what the proposal is, what constraints we're changing, what our obligations are, what our references are. And to me, that is all development work that needs to occur. And therefore, that wouldn't be development work that would be done as release 1. That would be done as something as part of a release 2 or further. So certainly I'd like to maintain the motion that we consider this for future use, as we've got here.
Is there a second for that? Anyone?
It's Johnny. Look, I have to say, I do tend to foresee Brett's comments there as correct to some degree, but I'm with Michael regarding I think it's part of future development that we'll have to revisit. I'm actually happy to second that, Michael,
Perfect.
after some consideration.
Thanks, Johnny. All right, so there is a poll out now on the current motion. This will be considered for future use if the motion passed. Ten more seconds. In 3, 2, 1. Okay, so 17 of 19 voted, so that's 89%. It was 9 of 17 or 53% in the affirmative, 3 of 17 or 18% negative, 5 or 29% abstaining. So the motion passes.
Stuart, there was 2 affirmatives in the chat as well.
Thank you. Missed those. So there's +2 on the affirmative for those as well.
So that's 11 affirmative, 3 negative, and 5 abstain.
Thank you. I'm trying to pull the results back up. I can't see them. There we go. Thank you. All right, motion carries on to our next JIRA.
Yeah, let's go. Do you want to go? So this one is also a referred telecon. We're in the chat. Yeah. So this is the imagery request intent proposal. So the service request intent value set includes proposal, plan, directive, order, original order, reflex. Proposal and plan are useful internal workflow requests, intent values, but are highly unlikely to be used in eRequesting. And then it was suggested these are use cases justify the use of them. Intent values in diagnostic requests that are sent, they should be included and a guide should be used. So you'll see here on our diagnostic request profile, we have an intent element. You'll see over here, the short description says proposal, plan, directive, order, all of these. You'll actually see down here though that we have fixed the value to order. So none of the others are valid, only order is. So in the eVote, there was a not persuasive disposition, and it's basically saying there are no other proposed use cases other than order. The requesting diagnostic request profile has a fixed value of order for service request intent that was discussed and voted on in that meeting. So it was removed from block vote 4 as referred to telecon. Heath, you've got a comment there that consider updating the short description to align with a fixed value and remove this confusion. So this is the short description that's showing here. This proposal plan directive is the short description that we inherit from the base diagnostic request, but we have fixed it. So it does still look like they're valid values, even though we have fixed it. So I think, Heath, that was just yours to still accept the not persuasive, but just modify the short as part of that.
Yeah, that's all. I think it just removes a whole lot of ambiguity.
I had a go at that. So we can look at changing this proposed disposition to not persuasive with modification. This is one of those interesting ones where we're saying it's not persuasive on the issue, but we are still going to make a modification to the spec. So the disposition would stay the same, saying that there's no other proposed use cases. We have a fixed value of order. But then we can add to this the modification part to remove potential confusion, update the element short and service across intent in the eRequesting diagnostic request profile to the kind of service request. It's interesting how the International Fire Spec has done this. They normally have descriptions of the element of what it is, but in a few cases like this, it actually just has the values of the value set in it. So we could replace that to make it clearer what it is. Heath, does that satisfy your concern?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that potentially the original issue was raised because of the misunderstanding that it was fixed, or maybe not. I don't know. But
no, I think you're right. I think that's given that the way this looks, it looks like you've got to choose from that list, right? The validator will go, if you use any of those others, the validator will say, no, you can't use it. It's fixed to order. But if you're trying to develop a system or whatever, reading the spec, I can see that confusion about this looks like the list.
I think Stephen's description there is, but used for internal workflows, but unlikely to be used in eRequesting. So I think he's read that description and not read the bit that's 3 lines down and then raise the issue. Whereas if it was just simply order, then we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Yeah. Jamie?
I'm just wondering if we want to agree in principle that the same should be applied in other profiles where this has happened. So, for example, communication request priority in the urgent provider profile. So we've got a fixed value of urgent, and it has a list of like routine, urgent, ASAP, and stat as options. So just agreeing in principle where we've got a fixed value and the fire spec is listing the available codes that we will apply a short to prevent any confusion.
I think you're. So which one was that, Jamie? It was on
The
here
example
we
I
go.
just gave, or
We've got here's one here, status. Got draft active, on hold, revoked, enter, and we've got fixed value of active.
We're not seeing your screen.
Sorry.
we can see this slide.
Oh, interesting. Let me.
You're sharing the app.
Yeah, I'm sharing the wrong one. Let me just stop my share and reshare it.
Yeah, I mean, as you say, the communication request is active. It's fixed value status active.
There's a few like that, aren't there? Yeah.
I mean, I think that one's more obvious than it is in the case of the order for whatever reason, because there's something stuck in between, because it comes straight afterwards. But
yeah, I mean, Stephen's ticket is basically agreeing with what you did in the fixing of the value. So it's, yeah, I think it's more, just a misinterpretation.
I'm wondering whether we just keep it to this one for the moment, given we don't know how many and what the other ones are, because there may be some debate over the actual wording as well. This one I've proposed as still leaving flexibility there. So if we do introduce other options in the future, we don't have to change the short again, but it just removes the actual values from the value set.
so you are not actually suggesting changing it to order, you're suggesting to change it to the kind of service request.
Yeah, that's the actual word, the kind of service request. So therefore, if we do change the constraint, and whether it's a fixed value or something else, that this doesn't change, which the reality is this is what should have been in the fire spec originally, an actual description of the element as opposed to the values that it is or could be. And that actually aligns with what the binding, the request intent has the kind of service request.
Michael, notwithstanding the fixed value, the issue still is that the spirit of this IG is eRequesting request, or for communicating a request for any of the diagnostic tests. So therefore, even though you have a fixed value, they are specified, but having other value that is not congruent with the exchange paradigm is still problematic.
Well, this is for the current use cases for release 1, that we agreed that order was the only appropriate value. So that was the decision that we made back in that original meeting.
Yeah, I get that. I actually, to Heath sort of comment, I actually saw the fixed value of order, but my point is that for a specification that is specifically designed for supporting exchange of orders, then those values, including proposed, are not sort of congruent with the spirit or the semantic of the intent of the IG, and that's the reason why I locked that ticket.
And none of us are disagreeing with you, I don't think, Stephen.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's no proposal to use any of those.
But why leave it there if there's no proposal?
Well, otherwise we have to change the binding.
And that's why we're looking at changing the description, but and what Michael's suggested changing it to, rather than actually having simply just order,
it's actually a required
is the
binding.
kind of service request.
So we can't change it. It's a required binding there. So we're just constraining it right down to order. And at the moment, we don't have a use case for anything else, so it will only ever be order.
So my understanding is that if you're constraining it down, it doesn't mean that you only kind of limited using the fixed value to constrain it down. You can actually constrain the value sets to a narrower value set rather than the broader value set of the original. Is that interpretation correct?
Yeah.
Which is what we've done.
Yep. There's only one
okay.
allowed value, and it's within the value set that's required, so it's good. Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Yep.
So while we're just trying to make it the standard clearer by removing the full list of the value set, and Michael's suggesting that rather than have simply order repeated, that we actually provide a real definition of the element instead, as in the kind of service request.
I think it's a good suggestion. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm in favor of this. So I don't know whether you want me to
Yeah,
motion
you
or
motion,
want me to
Brett.
second
the
motion,
you're
but
happy to, it was you referred to telecom, so
I'm just double checking what the actual definition of intent is, but I like the intent of the intent.
well, yeah, Heath, if you referred to telecom, so if you're happy to motion,
yes, I'll motion.
I'll second Brett here.
Yep, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, that poll should be out now.
I'm +1 in the chat.
Thank you.
And just to clarify, sorry, so we're not going to touch any of the others. I'm happy to raise a ticket if you want to discuss them later.
I think we might do them separately. Just
okay.
Michael Osborne, do you need to put anything in the chat for this one?
Yeah, I just put +1 affirmative.
Thank you. Cool. All right. So 3, 2, 1. Ending there. We have 16 of 16 voted, 14 in the affirmative or 88%, no negative, 2 or 13% in the abstain. Motion passes.
we got 30 minutes left. But this next one is probably one of the most complex ones. We need to try and get through this one today. There is a dependency on this one in Fire work group for some changes to AU base. So it's important we get to a resolution on this one so that we can advise Fire work group what changes we need in AU base. Okay, so 52409, I'll put it in the chat. Jump back here. So this one's talking about the communication request category is not representative to the profile presented as the type of message to be sent, such as an alert, notification, reminder. Use of notification or alert is not clearly a request to communicate results to a recipient. By clearly identifying the type of communication, then the request is clearly for results and does not require other elements to describe what type of communication is implicitly, reason code or about. So this is a suggestion about communication request category for providing results on our eRequesting communication profiles. Urgent provider, copy to as notification or alert should instead be a term that represents results explicitly. Results and draft content to support a term, explain the category and what type of communication is being requested. So create a code system, add the term report, request Fire work group to include a communication category code system, and then we have a value set for that and bind it to our profiles. So I'll go through some of the stuff we have at the moment to give this a bit of context. So we have communication request profiles. I may actually be easier to show you that in our IG. So we have 4 communication request profiles. We have an abstract base profile. Then we have profiles for copy to, patient, and urgent provider. You will see in each of these, for example, copy to has a category which has a fixed value of notification. And it has a reason code of copy to, so we can distinguish that this is a copy to for a request. We have I'll jump to urgent next. We have an urgent profile, which has a category with a fixed value of alert, and we have a reason code of urgent. And then we have a patient, which has a category coding of tied to a value set. And in here we have reminder or instruction. And then we have a reason code of patient. So just tying back to that, so we have category. It is bound to the communication category, which is an example binding. In that value set's got alert, notification, reminder, and instruction. So that's on category. For our reason code, we have a binding to an eRequesting communication request reason value set. In that, we have urgent, patient, and copy to, which categorizes our type of communication request, whether it's for urgent results, a patient request, or copy to. So as part of this ticket, there's been quite a bit of discussion, debate amongst the co-chairs and in the FIRE work group as well as about the use of these code systems and how we're applying them to communication request. So it's come up about whether we are actually using communication request category and communication request reason code correctly. So just some of the points on that. So currently we're using communication request reason code to categorize the type of request. So that's copy to, patient, or urgent. But the definition of reason code is it's intended to be the reason why the communication is needed, describes why the request is being made in either coded or textual form. The guidance says that textual reasons can be captured using the reason code text, but also it doesn't have a search parameter associated with it. So if you were trying to search for communication requests with a particular reason code, we would have to add a search parameter for that because there isn't natively one. So we haven't done that either. So on the other hand, communication request category, which currently has the notification, instruction, and the like in it. As categories used on other FIRE resources, for example, service request category, it's generally a code that classifies the resources searching, sorting, and display purposes. It currently has an example binding only to communication request category, which is alert, notification, reminder, instruction, but it's just an example binding. And then just noting in the examples that come with communication request, the example demonstrates the use of a category from a different code system, so not using that alert, notification, reminder, instruction. So I can just show you that one. So this is tied to the international communication request profile. There is an example in here. If we have a look at this, there is I'll find it here, category, assigning category, saying this is a solicited attachment request. So some local code system saying this, so it's not using notification, alert, reminder, like. So
has that got a reason code on it?
Reason code. No, it doesn't. So this has been going round and round and round with the co-chairs and by work group for a while. So the position the co-chairs got to was a persuasive modification on this issue. So we kind of tied our issues with the use of reason code and category to this ticket and looking at a persuasive with modification. So there's a reasonable amount in this, but I'll go through it. So what we believe is we're probably using reason code incorrectly because we're not really using it for the reason or the communication. We were using it to categorize the type of communication. So this proposal is saying that we use communication request category rather than communication request reason code to classify the type of communication request, supporting consistent identification, searching, sorting, and display. So we would create a new communication request category code system and value set with these codes. So this addresses the concern in the ticket too about the way we were actually defining these codes. So we would have a code for urgent results, and that's a request for results to be communicated urgently to nominated recipients. We have patient preference, so a patient's preference on communication to them from a service provider. And then we'd have copy to reports, a request for reports to be copied to additional recipients. So that sort of aligns with our intent for eRequesting, how we want to use these communication requests and their purpose. So it becomes very clear what they're for. So we would look to bind that value set as required to the communication request category on the eRequesting communication request profile. There's another page here. And then we would remove the must support and all customizations on communication request reason code and use communication request category to classify the request using the new category codes as fixed values. So urgent results, patient preference, and copy to reports on each of those profiles that we have in eRequesting. We also thought it would be useful to add profile-specific guidance that shows the key element differences between the different types of communication requests to distinguish them, just to sort of summarize how you use each of those profiles with the key differences on what you're trying to do. There's a lot there, and I've gone through it really quickly. So I'm open to questions to explain this further.
So is this an orthogonal value set for a category, or is it an extension on the existing HL7 one?
No, it'll be its own. So it'll be its own. We would actually propose to have this code system created in AU base, and the value set then in eRequesting that references that new code system in AU base.
So if I wanted to use notification that is defined in HL7 Fire, how do I do that?
So this is saying that you wouldn't. This is saying you'll use one of these three for eRequesting. Brett?
I think I would bind it as extensible anyway.
Yep.
And that value set defined in Fire is an example set. So I think it's not necessarily an excellent place to land, let's say.
Not even an excellent place to start.
Yep. So with the change, would the existing code system in AU base that was for reason, the reason field, could we rename that and repurpose that?
Yeah,
since
I think
the concepts are the same. Yeah.
If that's what we decide here now in eRequesting, we would take this to the firework group and say, we previously had this code system for reason code. We're actually repurposing it for use against category, but it's the same concepts. So yeah, look to repurpose the one we had
Yeah.
Because the intent is still the same. What we're doing here is the same. It's just changing the element against which we're doing it.
Yeah. So this was my ticket originally, and I'm much happier with this outcome if this is the way it will go.
And if it's extensible, I'm happy as well.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay.
I think too, it means from the AU base side, it also means we can start working up that code system with other cases and things as well, and we can start introducing those to use in that slot for communication request category, and start develop that further, because the only use cases we have now are these eRequesting ones.
Well, I'm happy to change this proposal to change the binding from required to extensible. So currently down here it says required, but we'll change that to extensible. Jamie?
Sorry, just a quick clarification for the disposition. So just wanting to make sure we're also going to, or asking, I guess, if we will also remove the must support and obligations from reason code.
Yeah, so that's on the page 2 here.
Okay.
So
Yep, cool.
remove the must support and all customizations on reason code,
Mhm.
and use the category. So
Great.
Is anyone happy to motion against this then?
Can I just ask a question? So Brett's got his hand up first, though.
Oh no, I was just going to say, like, the extensible binding, like, that's, I mean, I think that's the right way to bind it, but these are fixed codes in use anyway, right? Where they're going to be fixed, or there'll be a value. No, that's it. They'll
fixed
just be
within a
fixed,
particular profile.
in a particular profile.
But that doesn't stop someone to create their own communication request with another category within the context of eRequesting, which is what I'd raised elsewhere.
Yeah,
cool.
so
And I just,
the abstract, the binding will be on the abstract, the eRequesting communication request profile. So if we make that extensible, then you can derive your own profile from that and use something else.
Which is currently still binding to the existing HL7 one. So you're suggesting that you will actually change that binding on the abstract one?
Yes. That's what this proposal.
And could we make sure that more than one code is allowed?
Yes, so that was addressed in a different issue. That's in the current
Excellent.
e-vote at the moment. So because I think we had
yes, it is. It's in the e-vote.
Yeah, because Heath and I were discussing that in that e-vote, and we decided to have the Cardinelli discussion here, but that's
terrific. Thank you.
That is addressed. Yes.
What was I'm not sure if you mentioned it, but what was the name of this, or doesn't it, of this value set? Or coding system?
I haven't been explicit, but communication request category code system and value set. So
I know people have poo-pooed the existing ones, the example ones from HL7, but I don't see why it wouldn't be a starting set in base, but that's a conversation for base. But
that's right. So that's the code system will get created in base. The value set will be created in eRequesting.
Yeah. Raise the ticket.
Well, I think it's the discussion around the base code system.
Yeah, it was brought in essentially to support this, and and we haven't considered any other.
Because we've got a pattern in place for extensions of existing coding systems for Australia, right? So
yeah, but that value set's experimental and example only. So
I know it's example only, but I don't see why we would, like, they look like reasonable terms to me. I don't know why we're poo-pooing them.
I personally don't like them because they don't actually say what they're about. An alert's an alert. What's that mean?
Which is what this ticket was raised. This is why Brett raised this ticket originally.
Yeah.
But we always say that about example bindings, because there must have been a good reason why it never got any further. So I think you got to be quite careful about using them as a foundation.
Yeah, I would look at them concept by concept, Andy, and go, is that a good concept? Yeah. And we create our own too, because I don't think they're reliable in terms of the code systems behind them and stuff like that, because they're only examples, right? So they're not managed the same way as, as other things. Yeah.
I'd like to motion that we accept this proposal with the change of the binding from required to extensible.
I would love to second that, Michael.
Awesome.
Thank you.
All right, I'll put the poll out on that one. It should be with you now.
I'm +1 in the chat.
Thank you. And Michael Osborne, +1 in the chat as well. Looks like we've got all the votes, so I'm going to call it there. Alrighty, so 15 of 15 voted. We have 11 + 2, 13 in the affirmative, 0 negative, and 2 abstaining. Motion carries.
Great. So we're not going to get through everything today, but I have done these in what I think is probably the important order for these, especially since we've got Heath. So Heath, this is another one of your ballot issues. I will put it in the chat. Hopefully we can get through this one today. This is about our clinical context document reference, has no type, category, description, date, author, or custodian. So you've identified that these are essential metadata elements for identifying clinical notes with patient record. Without any of these, a clinical portal displaying a list of clinical documents will literally have nothing to display. So this may be okay if the document reference is contained, but there's no indication in the profile that it shall be contained. And we do address that because it wasn't intended to be contained. And although we do not have document reference profile in AU base or core, it's likely that we would take inspiration from the US document core reference, which at least has type and category as mandatory and date and author as must support. I'd also suggest the description would be beneficial, given the ServiceRequest supporting info slice can allow multiple clinical context document reference occurrences, and it's helpful to distinguish these.
So I'm happy with this resolution, which I'm sure you're going to go to.
Yep.
The only one that I would like to have a bit of a say is that the description. Now I accept that position, but I guess it's with some warning that if again rendering this as a list of documents, you've got nothing that actually tells you other than the fact that it's a clinical note. So it's kind of like a title of this document of some sort. So although you're saying, oh, we don't want to just repeat the content, well, I'm not suggesting that at all. I'm actually more suggesting it you use like the label of the source of the content as such. So whether it's something like a clinical note or you know, device or whatever. So but I'm okay with this to push it through, except for the warning around the description that I think that
I think you made a really good point there about description. The initial concern with this is not if it's used correctly, that's absolutely right. I think one of the problems we have with this profile, and it was a difficult choice to get us to use document reference for this, is that we have a plain text. And there was lots of debate about, man, we've got to base 64 encode this thing and all this kind of stuff just for plain text. And that's just the concern on the other side of this is go, hey, I can just put all this in description, right? And then we'll just start using that, because if people are duplicating it in description, why bother using the base 64 encoded content, right? So, I mean, it's not necessarily a good argument to say, don't use this because people might not do it properly, but it's also, given the contention around this initially, that looks like a nice simple way of, we'll just put in description, don't worry about the content of the document, right? And is it exactly the same? Like people might put some of it, they might summarize it or whatever else. So I think that's potentially as kind of future use consideration as well as this matures. We do need some implementation experience here, I think, in using this. So basically with this proposal is that we agree in principle that we need some extra metadata. It's date and author. It makes sense that we should make these must support and apply our default obligations. So the cardinality on these, they're optional. So we wouldn't make them mandatory. They're optional, so you can use them. We've already addressed the document reference type. So it's mandatory and has a fixed value of clinical note. So that's already been addressed in another issue. Category, looking at the way the US does it, they have a category of clinical note, and then they have different types of clinical notes. So, but it would be difficult for us in eRequesting to determine that, and that's probably something that AU Core document reference profile would address. We probably don't want to do that at this point in time. And then the discussion we just had about the description, that we leave it optional for the moment. I think this might be something that, with some implementation experience, we want to look at again. But it's potentially going to introduce more confusion and potentially some issues for right now.
Again, the category is potentially problematic, but I accept the rationale of that as well. So,
yeah, I mean, the reality is now the category may end up being clinical note in the future, and we have more specific types and actually flip that. So, well, I'd like to motion that we accept this persuasive modification as we have on the screen.
And I'll second it.
Thanks, Steve.
Awesome, thank you. Poll on its way.
+1 in the chat.
Put myself on mute. And another +1 from Michael Osborne in the chat as well. Looks like we've got all our voters in, so I will close the poll out. And we have 14 in the affirmative, 1 abstain, 0 negative. Motion carries.
10 minutes, we might get another one. So this one's about, I'll put in the chat as well. Back. So this was about interpreting profile elements labeled as a must support. So the conformance page is missing detailed guidance on interpreting elements labeled as must support. It may be repetitive AE core, but the AE core ones are written in terms of AE core actors and cannot be referenced directly. Having said that, I expect there are some variation of these rules in this IG, and hence should be considered for each pattern for each actor. Recommend the addition of interpreting profile elements labeled must support. I will just show everyone what that looks like in AE core. In AE core, we have conformance. Is it general? Okay. Under conformance, there is a section here about interpreting elements, profile elements labeled must support. There's some guidance here about how to deal with primitive elements, how to do with resource references, choice of data types, and it talks here in the context of the AU core actors. So, and then we've also got identifiers and profile elements, choice of terminology. So that whole section there. Now in eRequesting, we haven't done that. We have talked about conformance and declaring conformance and must support, but we haven't done that section on the guidance for interpreting elements labeled as must support. So the proposal for this is considered future use, that we definitely think adding a section on interpreting profile elements as must support may provide useful clarification. However, we need to do further work. to determine how must support should be interpreted in the context of eRequesting actor obligations and workflow patterns. Maybe consider future releases when there's more implementation experience to inform how. So I think with this, there's a bit of work to do on this. We need to go through the TDG. We need to make sure we understand what we're describing, how you interpret each of these. While it is something that's missing at the moment, I don't think we've done the work at the moment yet to be able to put it in.
I'm okay with this, except for the second paragraph. Completely understand that there is a lot of work to this because I've been
you've been through
it. But it's not implementation experience that will inform how to interpret these things. All right, so it's in fact, you've got to basically state this as the TDG so that the implementation can actually interpret them appropriately. It's the reverse.
Yeah, although, the context for this was that saying, when we know how to use these profiles better, we better know how to tell everyone how to interpret it. So I suppose, yes, take your point. It is to guide implementation, but we also potentially need the implementation experience in order to provide the right guidance.
Well, the implementation experience is there to indicate whether you've got the right obligations, not how to interpret the obligations. The interpretation needs to be set up first so that they can give you guidance back on whether that's the right obligation or not.
Yeah.
All right. So
yes.
Basically, if you strip out the second part of that and just leave it as there's lots of work to be done here in the context of eRequesting actors, I'm happy. But the fact that it's going to be implementation experience that informs the interpretation, I can't really go with that.
No, I think that's fine. That was just a little extra context, but less is probably better in this context. So I'm happy to motion that we accept this as considered future use with the first paragraph only of this disposition.
Brett, have you got any comment on what I've just said?
No, I think you're good. Yep, I'm happy with the outcome there.
Have we got a motion?
Yep, I have motioned and Heath.
I'll second it. Yes, I did.
Yes, second. Thank you. Alrighty. This is going to be our last one. So the poll's coming out now.
Does this also cover Dushi's ticket?
There is the next one, which I will jump to as soon as we finish this.
All right, looks like we've got everybody in, so I'll close it there. We've got +1 in the chat from Michael. And Michael, so we are at 11:13 in the affirmative and 2 abstaining, no negative. Motion carries.
So that's 1302.
Yes.
Okay. The next one, we actually don't need to vote on this one, but there was another ballot issue, which was Dushi's issue that Michael just referred to, about the eRequesting conformance page does not include information about interpreting profile elements must support. So we're going to, unless anyone's doesn't think this is appropriate, we will make that a duplicate because it is exactly the same issue. So we don't need to provide a vote on that, but if anyone's got any issues, they can say so now. Otherwise, that will end up as a duplicate. Not hearing anything. I don't know, we've got 3 minutes. I don't know if this is a quick one or not. I'll start it. We'll see if we can get really quick. I don't know if you'd had a chance to look at this one, Heath, but this was talking about our mandatory elements section. That when an element is mandatory, the data is expected to always be present, which is what our current statement is. The following sentence indicates the mandatory elements will display as must support, but there's no indication on how the requirement is always present. So assuming missing data is not allowed, we should be saying that. So this screenshot here says what we currently say. Mandatory elements are elements with minimum cardinality greater than 0. When an element is mandatory, the data is expected to always be present. The convention is, guys, to mark mandatory elements must support unless they are optional. So we're saying that this is persuasive, and then we add a sentence to the mandatory element section that missing data shall not be represented using data absent reason conventions, and the shall populate obligation will be specified in the profile element. So what this is saying is that we have made it mandatory for a reason in eRequesting. And if you're using the data absent reason, then it won't work for us. Like you have to provide the data. This is the opposite of AU Core, where AU Core is generic across lots of different use cases. We have a very specific use case here for eRequesting. So we're saying if it's mandatory, you need to provide it.
So I'll move to accept this one because you've basically saying that you agree. With almost my words, so that's good. My only comment is that there is probably a more definitive way of actually doing this in the profile, which I've always said that there should be an extra obligation, but people have said that there should be basically an exclusion of the DAR extension allowed, and I think that's just crazy. But anyway, too hard from a profiling perspective. But anyway, this words is sufficient, like for now. Like if we get
I think this
something that the
space is
validator
evolving
can
a
pick
lot
up,
still.
that's the problem, is the validator won't pick it up, right?
No.
So
I'm happy to
technically on the
second.
wire you could do it, but it's not against it's against this conformance statement, basically.
Is there a second for Heath's motion?
I'll second it, Michael.
Thank you. All right, that should be out now. +1 in the chat.
We'll just, while we're finishing off here, this next one is a duplicate as well of that issue we just discussed, that the performance page is missing detail about suppressed data. So we're going to flag that one as duplicate as well.
All right, that is all of the votes in. So for the minutes, it's 13 in the affirmative, 0 negative, 1 abstain. The motion carries.
Thanks, everyone. That was a huge effort. We didn't get through all of them, but we got through a lot, which is pretty impressive. We will carry the couple that didn't make this agenda to the next meeting, 20th of November. 4th of December is our last meeting for ballot reconciliation. In order to publish next year, we need to get everything done by that meeting. We have a connectathon, and then we have one probable final meeting for the year, which will be a report back and looking at fire maturity model assessment there. So that's the plan to get us to the end of the year. A couple more ballot meetings and then connectathon.
So just a suggestion, Michael, that 52516 that you didn't get to, I don't think it's going to be overly problematic. So do you want to just put that in an e-vote if you're having any more e-votes?
Okay. Yep. We'll see if we can.
That saves you some meeting time.
Yep. No problems.
Because again, you just basically.
I actually think we may have already had our v-votes done, so I think it will actually just go in the next meeting.
Okay. All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Cool. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you all at the next one. And for those of you down in Canberra, we will see you down there as well. There is no eRec TDG in Canberra. It's just core and base, I believe it is, from memory. But
yes,
we'll see everyone at the next TDG.
Well done.
Thanks, everyone.
See you later.
Other than that last one, Michael, was there any that you didn't do?